Welcome, thanks for joining me, astrologer Patrick Arundell, for the latest of my deep dive videos. Today I'm going to explore the Taurus new moon, which occurs across the 7th or the 8th of May, depending on where you're located, at 18 degrees and 2 minutes. Now I'm going to go through the themes of Taurus, but what also makes this year's particular Taurus new moon so unique. So I will be sharing the event chart that we can all collectively relate to, because there is one particular aspect that's truly exciting if we choose to really embrace its potential. I'm also going to share with you exactly where the event occurs in all the major cities of the world. And then, please stay with me, I will go through each of the 12 signs to explain what you can expect over the following 4 weeks, which is the period of influence of a new moon. If you're new to my channel, it's great to have your company. Please share any thoughts you have. This is very much a community. If you're a returning visitor, all your views and interactions are truly appreciated. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, as I've been mentioning recently, about 45% of people who tune in are not subscribers, so please click that subscription button and help the channel to grow. Also, if you'd like to get your free daily written horoscope fired to your device each morning, free of charge, please go to www.patrickarundell.com/subscribe, or you can click on the link beneath this video. I also provide the overarching key influence of each day, so we can all relate to that, plus our zodiac sign information. If you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, please check out my testimonials below. I share these as they come in, I don't edit them, and you can get a feel for what people have experienced working with me. Also, if you're a patron, you can download a new moon factoid. All you have to do is go to Patreon and you can download that there, along with any other previous documents that I've uploaded. You can become a patron from as little as $3 a month, but thank you so much for all my patrons who do support me. But if you'd like to tune in, get the document and decide not to continue subscription, that choice is yours. So, what is a new moon? Well, a new moon is when the sun and the moon unify, and this one is in Taurus. This is a particularly positive new moon because the sign of Taurus is where the moon is exalted. So in other words, it's where the moon rises. So after the sign of Cancer, which the moon governs, this is probably the best new moon we can get. But of course, there will be times when the new moon event is disrupted by other influences. But this new moon is given a lot of support by the rather usually parsimonious energies of Saturn, but I will go on to share that shortly. Now on the screen now, I'm showing exactly the time it occurs in your location. Now let's just think about the sign of Taurus. Taurus is an earth sign. It's the second zodiac sign. It's fixed, so in terms of its quality, it does like a degree of stability and continuity. But of course, Uranus has been in the sign full time since March 2019, and that's been a very provocative and at times very unsettling influence for us all. Taurus influences everyday money, but it also influences land, food production. It also influences anything to do with the arts and creativity, because the ruler Venus brings a much more sensuous energy to this sign. And what makes this event particularly interesting is that Venus is in the mix on this year's new moon. But the new moon is when the thrust of the sun, which is where we're going to manifest our desires in a more physical way, blends with the more emotive energies of the moon, which is more to do with reception, security, and anything to do with our feelings. So blending those two things together can see us think a lot about our value, our self-worth, which the sign of Taurus is very closely linked to as well. So on the screen now, I'm showing the event chart. I'm basing this on an overall zodiac chart. So that means we see that gathering of planets including Venus in the sign of Taurus. So we've recently had that very powerful conjunction across the 20th and 21st of April between Uranus and Jupiter, the first for 14 years between them. But you can see that combination of the sun and the moon. So they can bring out the best of each other. The moon balances the earnestness of the sun, but the sun brings a little bit more thrust to the more passive energies potentially of the moon. But you can see that Venus is pretty close. It's only about 7 degrees away. And for sure, in a natal chart, you would be very mindful of that Venus position. But I want you to look at the position of Saturn. Saturn at 17 degrees and 13 minutes is only 48 minutes away from being in an exact sextile. A sextile is one of the best and most enabling angles that two planets can have to one another. Now remember, the sun and the moon are known as the luminaries. The sun gives us our life force in the day. The moon, in terms of the light of the full moon, is very much to do with the light in terms of lighting up our emotions. But the interesting thing about a new moon is, of course, it's a dark sky. So for most people, we don't actually see the two together. But that unification of that energy and then being supported by Saturn is really interesting, because in recent years, Uranus has been having quite the impact to a number of lunations, whether it's been involved in the full or the new moons across various signs. But on this occasion, Uranus is in the same sign, so it's still provoking us in a way to find new ways of thinking about money, Taurus, but also about resources, Taurus. Also to do with consumption, Taurus, because the sensuality of the rule of Venus means that we do like the good things in life. Now, for some people, it can be a very aesthetic appreciation. I was very lucky today to be invited into one of my neighbours who's a potter, and that's a classic Taurus environment. It's just absolutely wonderful. All the different equipment in order to throw the pots, really gorgeous, but very earthy. But you can get people who have a very aesthetic connection to Taurus. It's about getting their hands in the earth. It's about growing vegetables, eating organic food, cooking things from scratch. A very rooted way of being. But for other people, the Taurus energy can be a real appreciation of a bit of luxury. And why not? So it could be where we may decide to treat ourselves in some way. But of course, having Venus back in the sign of Taurus could mean that our appreciation of the calorific goodies, if you've got a sweet tooth like I have, then that is definitely going to be something that comes to the fore over the next 4 weeks. So if you've been on a diet plan, perhaps to get ready for the beach, if you're in the northern hemisphere, it may be tested, because getting together with people, interacting and sharing nice food can be a really pleasant thing to do on the back of this new moon. But what about that Saturn position? I think what Saturn's saying to us, it's in the part of the zodiac that's to do with physical culmination. So this only happens every 29.5 years. So it's around about 28.5 years through that entire cycle. But because Pisces is the last zodiac sign, really Saturn's asking us to reflect on what we've achieved over that previous 28 or so years, particularly in terms of our attitude to physical resources. So, you know, the things that give us a sense of security in terms of property or cars or the jobs we have. To a degree, perhaps for some people, even status. But Saturn, of course, is about limitations. It can be about the controller of time, can be the planet of fate and karma. And so what we've got here is Saturn feeding into the moon and the sun is saying, let's appreciate what we've got. Because if we're constantly aspiring to something, you know, a bigger holiday, a bigger car, a bigger house, in some ways there may be some lack in other more emotional ways in our psyche that's driving ourselves working ever harder to create those material outcomes. So I think what Saturn's saying is, whatever we've got at the moment, let's try to appreciate it over the next month. But of course, the last couple of years has been a particularly tough time in terms of everyday finances for a great deal of us. So whether it's about food cost, energy cost, property costs, either in terms of borrowing on a mortgage or rentals and leases, it's all gone up. And that's been very challenging. And of course, Jupiter has come into the end of its journey through the sign of Taurus, which began in May 2023. And there may have been the thought that Jupiter would in some ways be a panacea for our financial issues. The truth is that's not the case, because even if inflation, the percentage is shook out and down, the actual real-term cost increases over 2 years ago is quite phenomenal for a lot of us. So that hasn't proved to be a particularly easy equation, Jupiter moving through Taurus, because Uranus in Taurus has given certain people or certain states the desire to acquire other people's land. And that, of course, happened just before the Second World War. And we know how that turned out. Not very well at all. Because, of course, Uranus is in its fall. So it's not a good zodiac sign for Uranus to be. So I think this new moon is really encouraging us, with Saturn's help, is to appreciate some of the parts of our everyday lives which do provide a lot of structure, a lot of meaning. They may be rituals like having a cup of tea or a nice cup of coffee and taking 10 minutes break, but those are the things we can appreciate because they're part of what gives us a sense of who we are. So that's one way we could look at this new moon. It could also be that after all the cost increases over the last 24 months or so, that we can start to sort of maybe become a little bit more attuned to the reality of that, even if it's not easy. So, and start to work within it. So whatever we can do within our own individual situations, whether it's be a bit more thrifty, whether it's upcycle some furniture, whether it may be clearing out some stuff that we don't need to create more space, decluttering, so very Uranus, because Uranus likes space, that can be a constructive thing to do. Also, we may have an opportunity to think quite dryly with Saturn's help about how we can perhaps just squeeze a little bit more out of the resources we do have. So if we have some savings or we have a particular financial product, could we get that from someone else where we get a bit more of a discount? So if you are thinking about insurance premiums, for example, on property, Saturn and the cost, Taurus, could you be a little bit more inclined to not just nod through the renewal from the existing provider, but actually take some time out to really hunt down the best deals? And I know lots of us has been doing this stuff pretty well all the time over the next couple of years, but we're really being encouraged to take this much more seriously. Also, I grew up in an age of thrift. People used to wash the milk bottle tops, the silver or gold foil, and save them up, and I think they would often go to charity, but obviously the bottle would be washed, it would go out on the front doorstep, the milkman would pick it up, so we were recycling. So without even knowing, that's really what we were doing. Or if you had some lemonade or you wanted some cider or beer, all the bottles would be returnable. So that kind of approach to really taking our resources seriously is what Saturn can help us with. But also, if you're someone who's really slogged away over a very long period of time and hasn't really felt that you've been getting the evidence of the progress, because the Earth sign likes tangible outcomes, Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, they like to see something tangible. I feel it's possible that is going to be the case over the next couple of weeks. Now, there is a couple of other things I want to share with you. Jupiter and Neptune in this chart are within 3 degrees and 20 minutes. And Neptune, like Saturn, is in the 12th house of culmination, which it rules. And Jupiter, the traditional ruler of Pisces, is coming to the end of its journey through Taurus, of course, going to be moving into Gemini on the 25th in terms of universal time, 25th of May. But before then, on the 23rd, we are going to have Venus and Jupiter come into a conjunction, and they're going to be angling back to Neptune. So over the next couple of weeks, if we're able within our resources to do something to help another person or a good cause, even if it's, you know, all that we can afford, that can, if many of us do it, actually add up to be something more substantive. So just being aware of the benevolence of Jupiter, but how we can use the earthiness of Taurus. So it doesn't have to be grand gestures. Sometimes when Jupiter and Neptune are together, it can take on a much more amplified form. But here I feel that the emotion of Neptune offsets the cooler vibe of Saturn in Pisces. So really, over the next month, I feel there is a great chance to celebrate simple but important pleasures that we have, to try to appreciate what we do have. There's nothing wrong with aspiring to something better, as long as it's not because we're trying to plug in some way something that's missing within our self-worth in a more psychological sense. So people who have worked hard can see some good news flowing through over the next 4 weeks. It can be a time when we could be generous, even in modest ways, to good causes, which I think would be a lovely thing to do. We know that Venus is in the sign of Taurus, blessing this event, which is great. And we know that the moon loves to be in Taurus because it's exalted. So there's a lot to say that this particular new moon is a real good one for the next month. And even if we have been battered and bruised by some of those big price rises, it's really our relationship to our own situation and how we react to the stress and frustration of that. Because if we can, in some ways, be quite canny, thrifty, and even enterprising, that is all really good from a Taurus viewpoint. Please stay with me as I go through each of the 12 signs. But if you would like to gain much more understanding of how Sirius astrology can play out in your personal situation, if you give me 3 pieces of personal birth data of time, date and place of birth, or date and place if you don't know your time, I'll produce for you your life roadmap report, which will help you to understand the patterns that have played out in your journey so far, but also gain a much more intimate understanding of those influences. Also, in my special package of 30% off, you can get your 12-month transits, the moving planets in the sky interacting with your nativity, and knowing when big events are occurring, and sometimes with the outer planets they are repeated because of the retrogrades, gives us a lot more of a bigger picture in order to guide ourselves. So if we're going through a period of particular frustration, we look at the chart, all right, okay, that makes more sense. And also, if you know your tropical nativity really well, you can get your draconic package instead. This bases the North Node at 0 degrees in Aries and helps you to visualize your situation based on the soul or karmic part of your nature, so what you brought into the world. The tropical natal chart is the outcome that we're going to, or we have the opportunity to embrace in this lifetime. It's brilliant stuff, and it really is an eye-opener for a lot of people. Please see the link below for more on that too. So Aries, over the last year, I think Saturn has at times been really quite trying. But I feel that if you look beyond that, there's been a lot of stuff recently where you've had a chance to set the tone on situations, really take a firmer grip on your life direction. And that's much more like you. So Saturn is still there asking you to stay abreast of the psychological part of your situation and past events and how that history has fed in and informed where you are now. But the chances are, over the next 2 weeks, something good can happen around finances. And if it does, it could be something very solid. And so whether it's a big move forwards or something more incremental, the chances are it can stick around because of Saturn and because you have Venus in the sign of Taurus as this event occurs. But of course, it isn't just about money. So, you know, if you have found with Saturn being in your 12th house, it to be rather challenging to your sense of well-being or peace of mind, I think you are going to gain your equilibrium a lot more over the next month. Taurus new moons are absolutely gorgeous because they give us a chance to set our intentions, but particularly when it's our sign about our individuality. Now, Uranus has been having quite the impact for 5 months in 218 and since 219, depending on where you've had your sun, ascendant or moon or other planets. That influence at time has been unsettling, but with Pluto in your ninth for a lot of that time, it's also been an opportunity for you to change things up when your essential nature is preferring to stick rather than twist. So I think there has definitely been some twisting. You know, whether you've relocated, started a new job, taken up a new interest, had some off and ons around your love life. The thing I don't think it's been is dull. But what you can do now, particularly with Venus in your sign, is bring a real glow of confidence. So a great time to feel better about yourself. Yes, I know that there has been those disruptive influences in your 12th house with all that Aries energy, and there may be still some of that going on. There may be a little bit of a decluttering around some of your associations, and it's been going on for the last couple of months, and it may have been painful to realise that certain people you thought you could really rely upon and were all in haven't been all in. So even if that information and working with that is still going on, really what you're being encouraged to do by Uranus is break free and liberate yourself from any energy, any person, any situation which is inhibiting your right to be utterly, uniquely, freshly you. So if you want to give yourself a glamorous makeover, wow people with the awesomeness of your aura, this next month is a fabulous time to do it. So Gemini, the new moon for you occurs in the 12th house, which can be a much more reflective and somber location for a new moon to occur. It's encouraging us really to look at the parts of life that we may be a little bit more hesitant to embrace. So that can be our fears, our anxieties, our shadow side. However, this particular event sees your ruler Mercury in a very bubbly area, and it's escaped from the retrograde now. We also have the part of fortune, the North Node and Mars all in a sociable area. But I think what the new moon's saying to you, particularly with Venus there, is that quality is more important than quantity when it comes to your associations. And if there is a connection that you've had, perhaps professionally, with Saturn in your 10th house, along with Neptune, that has served you well until now, but isn't quite as important as it was, maybe the collective in the 12th house is asking you to accept that there may be some kind of shift going on. It doesn't mean to say there has to be an obvious and voluble falling out. It could be just a drifting away from something that doesn't quite have the same meaning to you as it did in the past. But that energy in House 11 suggests there could be new players or new possibilities coming in, but ones which are very exciting. But you are going through a period of preparation. When the Sun moves into your sign on the 20th, to be followed by Venus on the 23rd, to be followed by Jupiter on the 25th, based on universal, that is going to give you the most extraordinarily wonderful opportunity to take a giant step forward. So all of this is your prep. But with Venus in the 12th house, it can see as quite nostalgic about past relationships, perhaps even getting out old photographs if you are of the era of photographs, and certainly just really being more in touch in a way with the more emotional dimension of relating. But also it's possible with Venus in the 12th house around money that you are thinking very carefully about making future provisions for people. So, you know, if you are grappling with the whole concept of writing a will and stuff like that, sounds a bit somber, but actually a really important thing to do. This would be a fine time to approach it. The other thing with Saturn in the mix is that maybe some of the connections you're making at the moment may not be particularly obvious. So you may be putting out feelers, taking soundings, doing quite a lot of research behind the scenes. It's all going to come back to you as this month goes on. Cancer, the new moon in Taurus for you is very much to do with your social situation, your future plans, your network, your higher ideals. Having Venus there can bring some refinement. There's going to be someone through to the 23rd who's taken on a more important role in your life. Maybe this is a person that you socialise with. It could be someone you've connected with online. You may have a shared hobby or interest. Maybe even a colleague that you can go out and have a few drinks with after work and just really chew the fat and really connect. So all of that is superb. So if you are wanting to elevate your life path in a new and different way, and perhaps spend more time with other people or more time demonstrating your individuality with Uranus in this location, great chance to go for it. What about Saturn? Saturn in house 9. Over the last year, any changes you've made have probably not been easy. So it's not to say they haven't happened, but it may have felt that you've been wearing lead boots in order to make things occur. Also, there may have been legal snags or advice you've had to gain. But you know, Saturn informing the role of this particular new moon just suggests some people that you're connecting to at this time have a set of ethics that means a lot to you, and this could be professional relationships with Mars high in the sky for you. So if you are wanting to realign in a new way with new people and creating a much brighter future, this is a very potent new moon indeed. So Leo, this new moon can be really, really positive in terms of your professional worldly interactions. If you are someone who has a lot of responsibility, either in a personal context or in terms of your work, the chances are that people are actually going to start to become much more aware of the quality of what you do. And because Venus is in the mix, that's adding to your natural people skills and personality power. But with Mars, the planet of passion, still in a great alliance with Pluto, there's a lot here for you to push forwards if you're not quite getting that recognition and you're not quite feeling that you know what the outcome's going to be around a work situation. There's a lot of thrust here that can see you get a result if you keep the faith. So set your intentions for the next month to really sparkle. Believe that people are going to become much more aware of what you have to offer. You are a uniquely warm sign, and when you're on form, and this particular event gives you lots of opportunities to shine, you can prove to be irresistible to many. So see where it takes you. Virgo, having a new moon in the part of your situation that's to do with change is really interesting because, of course, Uranus has been pushing you over the last few years to be a bit more daring. And Jupiter's come along over the last year. Now you've got Venus in the mix and the Sun and the Moon. There's a lot there that's really making you think about overseas travel, perhaps higher education, learning a language, an instrument, go into places where you can get your cultural needs met, whether it's to watch a band or to dance the night away or go to a museum or go to watch a show. All of those things really, really can be exciting for you, and it could be a case of change is as good as a rest. And because you're someone who often really invests in a very structured existence, this may be an opportunity to spin off a little bit. But the chances are, if you can do it with one other person that you get on really well with, whether it's a good friend, a partner, a family member, some kind of collaboration, but at the same time opening you up to some experimentation, would be the perfect blend. Libra, having a new moon when your ruler Venus is very close to the Sun and the Moon is very much to be desired. So that's a lovely part of the equation. You also have all that clustering of energy in house 7, including Mars and Mercury, which can give you a lot of self-belief. But the 8th house is about transformation, but it also, in terms of the more practical sphere, is about long-term finance and business, investment, insurances, mortgages, all that kind of good stuff. And because Saturn's informing the equation, your ability to cut through to what's really essential, slice it into small amounts, work out what's really important to you and what isn't, will help you to work with those energies in a practical way, in a really effective manner, I feel. But your interaction with people, which is where you shine most of all, definitely being lifted by all those Aries influences. However, in a more spiritual context, the 8th house is about evolution. It is about what we're letting go of. And sometimes when things come to a close, they're replaced by something new, but not necessarily straight away. So if there's an area where you've been very invested and it hasn't worked out for you, whether it's been a job, whether it's been some interest, whether it has been a partnership, and you have decided to bring that to a close, this could be, over the next month, a challenging time in a way. But as we have all the energy going into Gemini from the 20th, 23rd and 25th, based on universal, that is going to really set up a new epoch for you, which can be absolutely scintillating, to be honest. It really can be the beginning of a much brighter, much more outgoing, much more adventurous time for you for the long term. Scorpio having a new moon in the 7th house is rather delightful, particularly with Venus in the 7th house as well, because Venus loves being there. So this new moon also links, of course, to Saturn. Saturn is in your sector of romance, but also where you can sparkle with your personal skills and charisma. So if there is something you want to share with other people that's important to you, that you feel passionate about, that's the Pisces energy, you can showcase it very effectively, because I think the way you go about it is going to endear people to you, because they're recognizing that you're aware it's not just about what you want, you realize they need something from you too. Then that's the whole point of the 7th house, finding that nice sweet spot between the give and take, the compromise. It's not necessarily about one person dominating others. And you also have your ruler Mars in the 6th house now, which is giving you more physical robustness and stamina and energy. And Mercury's there as well, helping you to dice things up and see what's what. But really, if you're going on a new date over the next month, you connect to someone who really interests you. If there's a meeting of minds as well as an attraction, it could turn out to be a tie that really sticks around for quite some time. Sagittarius, all that energy in house 6. Just think about all the flexing and experimentation and change and at times testing energy that Uranus has created for all time since March 2019. I think now you can really start to see how this crystallizes for you. If you're wanting to change things at home in some ways, if you are someone a bit like we are, who's a bit laid back in terms of your home environment, this would be a great opportunity to really get things working in a much more streamlined way. But of course, the 6th house isn't just about tidiness and organisation. It can be about work. It can be about where we have commitments and obligations to others. It can be about our physical health. It can be around nutrition and diet and exercise. So all of these areas, you're given a platform to grapple with the ones that are important to you. But with Saturn being supportive, it's the ones that mean the most to you emotionally that you're going to get the most enjoyment from and meaning. But with all that clustering of energy in Aries, it doesn't mean that just because you're working on things that are a bit more practical, Taurus, that they can't be fun, because that's Mercury and Mars in your 5th house, and your larger than life personality applied to these fundamental strands of your situation can be a compelling mix. Capricorn, having Saturn, your ruler, in your 3rd house of everyday communication, angling to the new moon in your 5th house of creativity and your wishes and hopes, and also having Venus there as well. If there is somebody that you can spend time with, whether it is on a creative pursuit, a hobby, an interest, you like going out, watching bands, having really good fun, dancing even, all the 5th house, Saturn being there doesn't have to be a killjoy. It's just saying that things need to be organised in a way that works for you. It needs to be all clear, nailed down, and satisfactory to that part of your nature that likes to feel that things are well ordered. But Saturn being in your 3rd house, linking to that 5th house, also means that if someone gets flirty with you or is of interest to you in a romantic contest, house 5, the new moon, they've got to be someone who really is a person you could take seriously. And you're wanting also to be serious about fun. So there's a little bit of a paradox there, but I think you're getting my drift. This can be an awesome time for you, but it also has to work in a way that just fits in with those base instincts of yours. So Aquarius, you're on us since 2019 full-time, but remember those 5 difficult months in 2018 when Uranus squared up to Mars in your sign, which went through the retrograde. There's been quite a lot of dramas linked to where you live, family life, emotional situations, working from home, perhaps to do with COVID, the limitation on your independence and freedom due to COVID regulations. Not easy for any of us, but a sign that likes to be free, like an Aquarian, particularly challenging. But also maybe you've had youngsters heading off to college, or an older youngster coming back from college because they can't get anywhere to live, or you've had a new addition to the family, or you've been upsizing, downsizing, renovating, or the environment that you've lived in has been challenging in some ways. Neighbours that haven't been easy, noisy traffic, perhaps it's been to do with too quiet as much as too busy. Whatever it is that hasn't quite been working around your home, emotional and family life, it really has been a trial at times. But you know, over the next month, it can all start to make the most immense sense to you. And some of the things that you did do that you thought were disruptive and not easy and didn't necessarily reflect you in the best light, you may realise that actually you didn't have a whole bunch of choices, and what you did was do your best within the available options you had. But now things are going to start to really slot into place, and that's going to be extremely gratifying. And it may also be that the core financial part of your home and family life can also get stronger because Saturn, your traditional ruler, is informing this event. So a lot of things got thrown up in the air, particularly since 2019. And now they're all settling down, and actually you're going to start to make a lot more sense of what it's all meant and why you made the decisions you did, or why you're still where you are, because you haven't quite had the circumstances to quite get to where you want to be. But the clarity will be there if that's the case. But for many Aquarians, I think things are going to feel a whole lot easier over the next month. So Pisces, with your 2 rulers of Jupiter and Neptune collaborating on this event, and as we go through the rest of May, and particularly around about the 22nd of May, they're going to be really 22nd, 23rd, just in a beautiful alliance. So something to do with a flow of your life that you've been working towards is really going to gain traction more. And I think it's a lot to do with how you interact with other people, because your words, thoughts and ideas are going to be your currency over the next month. But because Saturn and Neptune are in your sign, feeding into the new moon and also the position of Jupiter, you're going to really start to feel that other people are getting where you're coming from more, which could be really pleasing. And it could also be good for your financial situation. But the pace of life can step up. There's going to be more invitations, more connections, a lot more text messages and emails going backwards and forwards, which will be stimulating, but it's taking you towards somewhere that's really good for you. And later in May, you'll have an opportunity to just take a breath and kick back a little bit, and you can really see what it's all meant in terms of an outcome around your emotional and psychological situation, which is looking extremely positive as the month goes on. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Thank you so much for joining me. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please help it grow and click that sub button now, and also the bell notification symbol. But for now, take care and all the best through this Taurus new moon.